Welcome back, everyone. It's been a little bit of time, but let's get right in with another reading. This time we'll have Back Alley Deals by Dr. Everett Mann and Tasers and Thermite by Lurk D and Dex Note. Now, without further ado, let's get in. Back Alley Deals. Anderson Massey suppressed a shudder as he stepped through the doorway. On the other, the proper side of the door, was an elegant Georgian-style paneled door with an elegant entablature. On this side, it was plain wood, with cracked and faded paint. It was also about 30 degrees colder, with a light fog. Right, let's go, he said to the guide, a thick-set man in a much cheaper suit. The guide was one of many specialists employed by Marshall Cutter and Dark. No one who worked for the company could ever be described as shabby, but his dark blue coat was a few shades cheaper than Massey's, and the cigar was cheap with noxious smoke. The man grunted behind a gray scarf and set out down the alley. It was always an alley in the Shadow Market. There were no main streets, just narrow alleyways winding their way between the brick buildings with boarded up windows and locked doors that hid whatever the minders kept in here. Massey hated this place. It wasn't that it was outside the world he knew. That was part and parcel of working for the company. No, he hated its shabbiness. It was a low-class world designed for lowlifes. He belonged in his office or the boardroom, not trudging down a muddy alley under a dingy twilight with ever-present smoke hanging in the air with the smell of tobacco and coal. Gentlemen should not trudge anywhere. They should stride with purpose. He stepped in something he couldn't quite see and a bit of a curse. Not so quickly, he said, his voice sharp. These streets are a bloody mire, and some of us take care of our appearance. Whatever, the man said from behind the scarf. He'd said hardly a dozen words since they had been introduced. Massey narrowed his eyes. I'd watch my tone if I were you, unless you'd care to find alternate employment. An innocent phrase, outside of the company. Within it, well, no one ever left the company of their own will, and a person could be employed in so many ways. The man simply grunted. Massey ground his teeth. He would have to arrange something unpleasant. Specialists were useful, but they had to know their place. Occasionally, they passed someone else on their way to an errand. Sometimes they were minders, in their gray leathers and brass, smoked goggles. Sometimes it was a man from the normal world, shoulders hunched, eyes darting from place to place. Sometimes it was something more exotic. Tall and thin, or short, squat, and scaled. Finally, the guide stopped at the entrance to a short, narrow, blind alleyway. There, he said. Well, thank you very much, Massey said, indignation thick on his voice. Wait here, and don't let me catch you listening on. This is a highly sensitive meeting, and you're not paid to eavesdrop. The man grunted. Massey walked to the end of the alley and waited. Naturally, it started to rain. By the time the droplets of water made it through the smoke and past the leaning rooftops, they were a dingy gray. He shivered and wrapped his coat a little tighter. He wished, now, that he'd gone with a coat a bit more like the guide. It would need careful laundering, and that was if it was salvageable. Back alley deals weren't supposed to be quite this literal. His guide could only be seen by the faint red pinprick at the end of his cigar. After a few minutes, he realized he wasn't alone. 2 minders were waiting for him. Neither turned to look at him, nor did they say a word. They didn't show any discomfort from the brain, though it was hard to tell with their eyes hidden behind the smoke glass lenses. Only their noses and mouths showed that they were human, or at least had human-like mouths and noses. No one he'd spoken with was entirely sure on that point. Massey thought about asking them what they were doing there, but decided it wasn't worth the bother. Finally, after Massey was thoroughly soaked, a handsome-looking man entered the alley. His name was Mr. Fire, though he pronounced it Fiera. His smile was a touch too shiny, and his suit, much nicer than Massey's, appeared perfectly clean, if a bit damp. He carried a travel case at his side. "Anderson," he said. "I saw you, 2 months ago? How's the wife? Kid starting softball soon?" Massey forced a smile. He had never told Fire about his wife or child. "They're fine. Thank you for asking." You got here a bit early," Fire said. "Should have called. I could have left a bit sooner. Saved you a bit of soaking." "Oh, it's no trouble. Besides, I know it's a bit of a hike," Massey said. That was something he'd been briefed on by another one of the company's specialists. He walks everywhere. Everywhere. Cars and planes, trains and armored cars, all at his disposal, and stranger means besides, and he walks from one end of the world to another, however fast he needs to, arriving just when he intends. "Well, what's done is done. Gents, glad you could make it as well." He turned to the minders. "You paid," one of them said, shrugging. The shoulders didn't move quite right, Massey thought. The specialist who had brought Massey was moving in closer now. Massey felt a twist of annoyance, but also a bit of comfort. He suddenly felt very exposed, with the 2 minders as well as Mr. Fire there. He wished he'd been a little more polite to the man. But anyone who worked for MC&D was professional enough to get on with the job despite that. And anyway, an executive ranked far above any common thug, no matter how talented. "Always pay your creditors when you can, or you'll pay even more when you can't," Fire said. "Did you bring it?" In response, the minder pulled out a broken pocket watch. Presumably it was a dream or a memory. Massey had been briefed on that. They could take on almost any form, from old cassettes to tourist trinkets to worn coins. In Carter's office was a fragment of obsidian, which was supposedly the oldest memory the minders had ever stolen. Fire took it from the minder and showed it to Massey. The jingling of the chain echoed faintly with a man's laughter, and he could just make out a smiling face in the shining surface. "What is it?" Massey asked. His eyes darted to the specialist, who was now hovering behind the smiling man. "A memory," Fire said. "Fresh from the Black Queen's mind. You've had some trouble with her in the past." "Not as much as you," Massey said suspiciously. "Ah, but I already have the information from this memory. It might do you a bit more good. I think it should cover the records we discussed and then some." "We didn't discuss any," Massey began. "It's a deal," the heavy-set man said. "The records from the camp tomorrow, and the rest paid later." Massey glanced back at the heavy-set man. He had hardly said a word on the way in. What was he doing? "Glad to hear it. And great to see you out of that chair and back on your feet," Fry said. "Tell you what, though, I've grown rather fond of Andy here. Throw him in and we'll call it even." To Massey's growing confusion and horror, the heavy-set man nodded, spat into one hand, and held it out. Fire returned the gesture. The heavy-set man made a gesture then, a peculiar one, and Massey felt his legs give way beneath him. His eyelids felt strangely heavy. "Delivery will be the usual place," the heavy-set man said. "And there had better be no tricks for..." Tricks? Never! As he started losing consciousness, Massey heard the smiling man laugh. "Would I cheat my good friend Carter?" Back in the office, Carter carefully put the memory away. It could be reviewed later. For now, the Happy Acres incident needed his attention. Every good company needs to do 3 things to succeed: handle the money, deal with the customers, and do the work. Marshall dealt with the customers. He would be consoling grieving parents and smoothing ruffled feathers. Carter handled the rest. Let Dark stew in whatever hell he came from. Let Marshall be the smiling face of the corporation. They couldn't do shit without Carter. There was a stack of printouts and folders on his desk. Everything he could gather, steal, and extort about the Happy Acres incident. That stack of folders had cost him dearly. Field reports from a bent GOC agent. The best information his Serpent's Hand contacts could get him. A pet senator who had given him access to the UIU's database in exchange for certain favors. Knowledge was power, so was money. They could be exchanged for each other if you knew how, and Carter was an expert. He'd spent much of the latter 2 to gain as much knowledge as he'd found. Now that he had it, it was time to put it to work. He picked up the first folder and started reading. One wall of Carter's office was a corkboard. He didn't trust computers for this kind of work. He liked something he could touch. Over the next few days, it became covered in an increasingly intricate pattern of papers, photographs, pins, colored strings, scrolled notes. One by one, he eliminated the usual suspects. The GOC was otherwise occupied. The insurgency was incapable of operating so openly in the area by reason of blood. He'd have heard about any hand members planning such an attack, and besides, there were no ways nearby. There was one index card left uncrossed when Carter finished his analysis. Foundation. Now there was an interesting thought. It was rather Byzantine, but the overseers were so enamored of playing games. It took Dark to keep it all straight. They could have. They might have. No. He knew every word that had passed between the overseers for the past 2 weeks. He would have known if they were up to this. A rogue operative? Unlikely. The overseers kept a close eye on their assets, had done so ever since... Jennifer? Carter said to the woman-shaped thing that manned his desk. Kretschmer reports on the Foundation from... Make it 2006, September. Yes, Master Carter. There was a tinny quality to her voice. He'd have to talk to R&D about that before they announced the line for their customers. The secretary passed him an old dog-eared file that smelled of dust and old paper. He saw the name he was looking for on the first page. Carter put down the file and picked up the phone. His hand didn't shake, but the veins on the back of it stood out. And there was a slight twitch in his left eye. He dialed. Carter! Marshall's voice was as smooth and practiced as before. I was just talking to the Goldenbergs. What can I do for you? Trouble, Carter said. Oh, it can't be that bad. Not with you handling it. How bad is it? Dark bad. There was silence on the other end, then, shit. I need a meeting of the entire board as quickly as possible, Carter said. How quickly can you settle with the families? I can be there first thing in the morning, Marshall said. That will be fine. No need to contact Dark. Dark would arrive without needing to be asked. Carter rubbed his back where the tubes had, until recently, connected him with Jenkins? Franklin? No, it had been Cho. No matter. Gone now, good riddance. Carter put the phone down, picked up the red marker, and drew a broad slash through the index card marked Foundation. He picked up an index card and pinned it over that card. He wrote a single word on that card. Bowie. After a little more consideration, Carter added a question mark. He hoped he was wrong. He really did. Otherwise, this was going to be very bad for business. Alright, that's the end of the first story. Let's start on the next one. Tasers and Thermite. Django Bridge woke up. He had been sleeping in his office, face down at his desk. The glow of his screensaver and the yellow of a lamp outside were casting a mixture of warm and cool light in the room. He sat up and cracked his neck, glanced at his monitor. Red. That was not good. Alert message prompt. Unauthorized login attempts. Location node 66A. Please contact system administrator. Bridge was the system administrator. He was also the only level 4 on the site. He swiveled out from behind his desk to hustle over to the server room downstairs. Who in the hell was screwing around with the servers at 3 in the morning? Only persons with clearance level 3 or higher were even allowed in the server room. As he made his way downstairs and through the holes, Bridge unclipped the radio from his belt and made a call. Site 66 was, originally, a coal power plant abandoned for about a decade or so before SCP-1479 was discovered inside one of the buildings. Most structures had been updated and upgraded, with other SCP objects scattered around the premises. Bridge's office was in Building A, the largest and most extensively updated structure, complete with modern offices, an exceptional security system, and a block of data archival servers on the second basement level. Most of the halls were lit by stark fluorescent lighting against the old heavy metal and concrete corridors, giving an industrial look to the lower levels. Bridge arrived at the second level and immediately noticed how quiet the place was. No security peons in sight. Strange. Bridge to security. I have an unauthorized entry in the new archive servers. I'm taking a look. He cocked his head to the side to see an open server panel. He turned the corner to find a man he didn't recognize. The man wore an Oxford white suit with black tie and suspenders, and was bent over a bundle of tangled wires and devices. Hold on. Stop right there. Hands up. Bridge quickly drew and named his taser at the man. He had practiced that motion quite a bit in his off time. The man looked up with a shocked expression. Why there, Huss? I just... Stand up. Hands up. Whatever you say, listen though. I'm responding to the same thing you are. Probably. Okay, then who are you and what the hell are you doing in my servers? Bridge's arm relaxed a little. Suspenders, pale, earpiece, ITP on. Look, I got ID. The man reached into his shirt pocket to produce a Foundation badge and a foldered transfer order. Bridge peered down and scanned it. Site 66, information requisition by order of Dr. Carlisle Actus. MTF Lambda 2 transferee agent Dietrich. Lurk? He gave Dietrich a queer glance. Has family Scottish? Dietrich shrugged. Bridge continued to read Dietrich's orders, his eyes flicking between the ID photo and Lurk's face. He'd seen this face before, somewhere. Probably when he was combing the personnel index for Lament's email. He shook his head and stepped a bit closer, clipped the ID tag to Dietrich's pocket. Feel like I should have known we had a new guy. Did Dr. Sadelman confirm you? What are you up to at 3 in the morning? Dietrich let out a long exhale. Just arrived 12 hours ago. I'm still on the different time zone overseas, but really, this shit ain't mine. He mentioned to the stripped wires and alligator clips pouring out of the open server panel and the silvery canister nestled in the middle. 12 hours, Bridge wondered, leaning over to get a better look around the newcomer. After a moment, he slipped around and crouched down to get a better look. Panel cut off the hinges, lots of wires, no brand names or writing, and the wiring. They hacked the security interlocks? Bridge stood back up, a hand going to his forehead. Dietrich nodded. Yep, and look at here. They got the site's jammer frequency set to disable its own comms. That makes sense. Wait, serious? Bridge jumped as he was interrupted by a wet plitch sound, and Dietrich dropped to the cold linoleum. For half a second, Bridge thought his finger slipped and he'd tased Dietrich himself. Then he saw a masked feminine figure holding what looked like a handheld electro-pneumatic launcher. Was all he could convey before the assailant slipped out of sight. God damn it! Dietrich grabbed into Bridge's pant leg in pain. Sorry. Bridge bent down and pulled out the projectile from Dietrich's back. Gosh, shit! Dietrich shakily picked himself off the floor and took a knee. That fucking smarts. Whoa! Are you okay? Bridge cringed as he held the projectile at arm's length. The nasty black and yellow pronged cylinder was still firing tiny electric arcs into the air. He marveled at the brutality. This is not standard issue. Yeah? No shit. You gonna go after her? What? We're cut off. I've just been tasered and can barely get up. Go on after her. Dietrich tossed the Bridge a tiny audio earpiece. Here. Put that sucker in. Right? Okay, why? Bridge wiped the earbud off and slipped the piece into his ear canal. Testing, 1, 2, chirped a perky female voice on the other end. Dietrich motioned to his own identical headset. Alex, your connection's good. I'm gonna plug ya into the wireless direct. Give this gent your directions. Corner off the burp. Then see if we can establish comms for the cavalry. Copy all that? You got it, sir. Dr. Bridge, head forward and make it that first right. Bridge took a deep breath and nodded his head, and took off just as Dietrich plugged in his mobile device into a USB port. Okie dokie, Dr. Bridge. Take this left and we'll flank her. I'm closing accesses and leading her into a utility tunnel. She'll be blocked in. Just Bridge. And thanks, Sir Alex? Alex, right? Are you off-site? No, silly. I'm one of the AI conscripts. Oh, okay, cool. I just read about those. Like, with You missed the turn. Right, sorry. Bridge jerked to a stop and turned on his heel to continue jogging down the hallway. Great. I got her on the security cameras en route to you. Duck behind this corner for a moment. Bridge complied and pulled his taser back out. Bridge, your gun. He cringed and slipped the taser into his pocket, while he fumbled for a standard-issue firearm with the other hand. Good. Now, if you would, fire 2 shots from around your corner down that hallway adjacent. What am I shooting at? It doesn't matter. Just spook her a little. She's going deeper into the basement. Bridge complied and blindly let off 2 rounds. Motherfuck! Yelled a female voice, followed by hurried steps in the opposite direction. Thank you. She's headed for the dead end now. Ha! Bridge grinned. Excellent. Nothing down there but old pipes and circuit breakers. Dietrich, you there? We got her trapped, fixing the comms too. Yeah, copy that. Good work, you two. I'm just trying to deal with whatever this thing is she left behind. Dietrich looked at Merle in the reflection as he pointed to one of the screws on the canister itself. Good call there, partner. He squinted his eyes in hopes of identifying the dark gray powder caked around one of the sunk screws. With his fingernail, he scooped up a teeny bit and gave it a whiff. A trick he picked up in his years tagging along with MTF MU-13. Guys, this yield's Thermite. Guessing she wants to cover her tracks. Merle signed to him reassuringly. I know what to do. What? Wait, what? Bridge pushed the earpiece in deeper just in case he'd heard wrong. He hadn't. The repeated word thermite, followed by bomb, just put a pit in his gut. Lurk, hello? Can you disarm it? There was a brief pause between Alex and Bridge as they listened to a few choice expletives followed by an eventual affirmation. Good. I almost have comms back online. Hang tight for another 5 minutes. So now what? Bridge, approach and keep her in place. Okay, 10-4. Bridge straightened up. His spine cracked a little as he headed into the utility tunnel. His panic shifted into anger. She dared put a bomb in his archives? He couldn't see her, but knew she was there. There's no exit here. Put your weapon on the ground. His heart beat fast. His hands trembled as he held up his gun. There was no answer. Bridge set his jaw and flicked the safety on his gun to off. Lay down, do not move, he shouted. He carefully drew closer with measured, even steps. He held his gun in one hand, reached into a pocket to draw his taser. He held them forward on either side as he stepped down the darkened hallway and found nothing but pipes. What the hell? Where'd she go? That's impossible. She's not on any of the video or infrared feeds anymore. The tunnel suddenly reverberated as the rolling faint sound of thunder passed through. What was... Warning! Fire detected in server room. Halon gas extinguishers active. Please evacuate to level B1. Dietrich! The smoldering hold that used to be Site-66 main archive was quickly put out by the gas. A few seconds later, and Dietrich would have been found as a crispy charcoal skeleton. Merle, when you say you can help, that don't mean to ramble on about cutting red or green wires, then giving up and telling me to toss it into the trash can. Dietrich would have yelled more, but trying to talk between coughs was proving too difficult. He looked into a reflective surface to see Merle sign a response. I thought it worked well enough. Dietrich angrily signed back. You have terrible ideas. Merle then flipped in the bird, as did Dietrich, only much harder. Bridge returned to see Dietrich flipping himself off in a reflection. Right. Oh, thank God, you're alive. You alright? Huh? You're alive later, though. Dietrich pointed to the blackened room behind them. Bridge held up a hand between his eyes and the disaster. Don't even want to think about it. Dietrich, I'm looking through the backup logs now to view the most recent changes. Comms is also backup. Security inbound, and they'll want an explanation, I imagine. Right. I got a bloody shoulder and singed hair. I reckon there'll be a debriefing. Alex? What about you two? Where's that spy? Dunno. She just fucking disappeared. Bridge gritted his teeth, pulling his earpiece out and looking at it. Did Dietrich just carry around a bunch of these things? What do you mean? Dietrich furrowed his brow. I mean, she disappeared down a dead end. But what about... But Dietrich toppled to the floor a second time, as a team of 6 security guards rushed into the hazy server room. Everyone freeze! Shouted the security guard on point. Bridge stuck the Alex piece back in and put his hands up. No, no, no. Not him. He's Foundation. God damn it! Dietrich stuttered in between the clicks of a taser. Bridge accompanied Dietrich to the infirmary to help him rest and get patched up. Merle was in Dietrich's periphery, laughing his ass off. Dietrich fumed. Merle had clearly intentionally decided not to warn Dietrich that the guards were coming. Not that this was surprising, Merle was prone to dick moves. Alexandra just finished running diagnostics and a few other utilities on the auxiliary servers. So, why were you transferred, Dietrich? I don't reckon I can say why. I'm under orders from the higher-ups. Gotta take it up with my new boss. Dietrich rubbed the gauze patch on his shoulder. I'm guessing you can't tell me who. Dietrich hesitated a bit before answering. Ever heard of Lambda 2? It's a new outfit. I'm not even sure what it's all about. But that's what I'm running with. Bridge cocked his head a bit and leaned his weight onto the doorframe. I heard a couple of rumors about that. Something about the legendary Dr. Clef making it happen. I thought they made him a desk jockey. Dietrich nodded. Yep, I reckon it was time to dust off that weird shit-kicker hat of his. He coughed a bit. His lungs still stung from the halon gas. All I can tell ya is that I'm heading out probably in the morning. This was supposed to be a quick stop. Perhaps that Black Ops lady was after the same thing I was. Bridge's expression hardened. Go on. He closed the door to the triage room. Dunna get your panties in a wad. Dietrich held up his hand. I just had Alex running checks within Site 66. You folks have some real good internal record keeping. Just make sure a certain group is on the up and up. Heard they might have made contact here. Bridge huffed in irritation. Yeah. Nobody thought to tell me this. Who? Dietrich squinted past Bridge. Merle's hands were signing to Dietrich from an adjacent mirror. He would be useful. Dietrich nodded in agreement and paused to choose his next words wisely. Bridge, you probably want to know who torched your archives and why, yeah? I just had a crazy idea, but hear me out. I reckon you should accompany me. Us. Yeah, us. To Site 17. Site 17, okay. And why is that? Bridge murmured, glancing to the side as if to glance at Alex in his ear. He began to shift through the upcoming schedule in his head, visualizing his calendar. A few meetings, containment review, maybe. No, he probably could spare some time. Definitely. Alexandra chirped in Bridge's earpiece. Based on some of these search queries, I'm sure the intruder was looking for files on Alpha 9, like we're doing. I need a data rat. Really, I need a data rat with enough clearance to get Alex in where she needs to go. We work together on this. I can shoot 2 coyotes with 1 bullet. And that bullet's name is Alex. Want to ride the bench or steal home on this? I don't golf, but I think I'll come along. Give me a few hours to set everything in order. Bridge took out his phone and turned on his heel towards the door. I'll see you in a bit. Dietrich nodded. Yep, meet me in the motor pool garage. Bridge paused for a moment, his hand on the door handle, letting it register in his mind. The garage, not the tarmac. The garage. Got it. See ya. Bridge turned the handle and stepped out. All right, and that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute joy reading for you all, and I hope you guys have a wonderful time out there. Good luck.